This changes the entire landscape of the Montreal Canadiens as Elliotte Friedman drops a massive report on Lane Hutson's contract extension. Plus, we have a new article from RG that highlights how his contract will likely come in far less than anyone would have anticipated, even with the new recent signings of Hughes and Jackson Lacombe. We have to dive into all of the latest news there, but also a very interesting bit of information coming from Habs practice as the new lines for their last preseason game have come out, and there are certainly some questions, all of that coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. And we'll start with the lines, because Zachary Bolduc is out day to day with a lower body injury. Side note, why? It's always lower body injuries. What are these boys doing? Anyway, Joe Veleno is the one to jump up and take a spot on the second line, Jesse. And in a game that's looking like it could very well be this last preparatory game where we're actually running our four lines that we're going to start the season with, Veleno is the one to take Bolduc's spot, which to me indicates that he might be near the top of that list of players to make the team. Oliver Kapanen stays at his spot, with the fifth line being Blais, Beck, and Florian Xhekaj. Now, we also still have Laine on the fourth line with Anderson and Evans, which is a bit interesting as well. What do you make of these lines, Jesse? Do you think this is pretty close to what we'll get opening night? Or I still think there are tweaks that could be made, but it certainly seems to be a little bit of a hint as to who might be making this team.
Yeah, this is a big indicator towards who. You have to feel like Joe Veleno will be making this team at the extra forward. Yeah. You know, obviously, Oliver Kapanen, Florian Xhekaj, and Owen Beck, in my opinion, even though Joe Veleno has had a good camp, all three of these young guys have been better. That being said, it's looking right now from what we're seeing, Kapanen's going to make the team. Veleno's going to get that extra skater spot, you know, to what our boy Pezzetta had last year. Yeah. Why? Of course, because, you know, our guys need to develop. Florian as well as Owen Beck, they're going to be playing valuable minutes for Laval. They're going to be called up at a moment's notice. But Josh, like, we're getting close, and my excitement's really just getting through the roof as a result here. And it does make sense, like, if you're Kent Hughes, in terms of your asset management, you're really just to give Joe Veleno, again, who has had a good camp, some trial here. You have to feel like he's going to get a little bit of run, you know, during the season, but really he's prioritizing really the development of his prospects. So they're not going to be playing here in Montreal, wants to make sure they're playing Laval. Would I love to see Florian Xhekaj in the lineup for the final game against the Ottawa Senators? Yes, I would. But that's why we don't have just one Xhekaj in the line. We got two. Arber's going to be holding it down for both of us if there's any type of funny stuff there. So, Josh, like, we are getting very, very close here. And yeah, my excitement is getting through the roof, like, as the team's really starting to take shape now.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the depth on this team is outstanding, right? And again, Bolduc will come in for Veleno. And, you know, the thing is, too, we could keep 14 forwards, 7 defensemen, or 13 forwards, 8 defensemen. Like, there's some flexibility here. We could even keep 2 forwards. We don't know what we're going to do. We could even keep 3 goalies like we did a couple years ago if there's fear of Capo Kakinen getting taken on waivers, though I don't think that's going to stop them from sending him down. There are a lot of questions. Again, Laine with Evans and Anderson. Is that going to work well? If Laine is just a power play merchant, playing some nice minutes with guys that can get the most out of pretty much any line, that's what Anderson and Evans are good at doing. Nice two-way guys. And there's a lot of interesting stuff, but look, we don't have enough time to talk about all of that. We'd love to hear from you guys down below. But Jesse, I completely agree. I think Kapanen and Veleno, they're right there at the top of players that are going to take these forward spots. Veleno will be the 13th, but you know, you maybe never really know. There could be some interesting things happening before the season starts. But another thing we're hoping happens before the season starts is a Lane Hutson extension. And oh boy, do we have some stuff. But before we get into what Elliotte Friedman said on 32 Thoughts, which is a big thing that we are very excited about, there's been a lot of talk about how Hutson's probably going to get a lot, right? Especially with the signing of Jackson Lacombe and Hughes, both coming in at $9 million. Jackson Lacombe at the 8-year mark and Hughes at the 7-year mark. But there's a thing about that, Jesse, and a recent article from RG kind of dove into some of the reasons why Lane Hutson could very well get a similar number. And they said, look, that's where Hutson's deal becomes interesting, because even if his AAV matches Hughes or Lacombe at 9 mil, the Canadiens have tools from signing bonus structures to tax-efficient mechanisms like trusts and deferrals that can help him take home more money than his peers without inflating the cap hit. They talk about there's a retirement kind of plan fund that they can invest money into that will help the cap hit. And also, if you structure it like Kaprizov and like a lot of other stars, in terms of signing bonuses taking the most of the money, that actually gets taxed at a lower rate, a much lower rate than your actual salary. So with this all said, Jesse, you also got to think about leverage. Jackson Lacombe could have gotten offer sheeted, and he only had 2 years left till UFA. Hughes, they desperately needed him. Lane Hutson does not have arbitration rights, and he's not eligible for an offer sheet. With all of this thought of, Jesse, and again, before we get into exactly what Friedman said, like, the more info's coming out about Lane Hutson, the better I feel that we're going to get an absolute steal of a contract.
Yeah, it's really so close, and there's really, like, the Kent Hughes swindles that we're used to.
Yep.
And then there would be like whatever this is.
Put him in the
That's
Hall
like
of
just
Fame, bro.
whole nother level. Like, exactly. Like anything sub 9.5 is just a complete steal. And how Kent Hughes will be able to take those savings and really pay that forward, how that'll compound over the years and save into our next best, into our next star player to really just keep this Lane train and more just rolling. I think it's really exciting. And that might be part of the motivation here for Lane Hutson. And maybe, again, we thought that just from his character, he might be open to taking a little bit less. That being said, it's like a lot is being made of like the leverage. Jackson Lacombe, 2 years away from being a UFA. Luke Hughes, which is the whole Hughes family situation, that whole drama that they're kind of hoarding over the Devils' head and kind of forcing them into a situation. We're so lucky. The Ducks have had their own kind of contract problems this offseason. The Montreal Canadiens, we're staying far away from that. We're just developing great relationships with our players here. And again, like you really have to feel like Hudson's leverage, though, like, it's like, we'll probably get a good deal, but it's not like some, Marco D'Amico is maybe saying his leverage is negligible, and he brings up a lot of great points, but I would say there's a fair amount of leverage that Lane Hutson has, like just in pure skill, being such a bigger game changer than Jackson Lacombe or Luke Hughes, while still being younger than both of these guys, and Lacombe significantly. Here, you have to feel like Lane Hutson, what he'll be producing at 24 when he's Jackson Lacombe's age, these numbers are going to be popping out of the page at you there. Other, factors for Lane Hutson of why, if we're getting anything under 9.5, it's out of the kindness out of Lane Hutson's heart. It's this guy just beat Macklin Celebrini, the guy that was selected first overall as the best prospect to come into the NHL. Lane Hutson just had a better season than him and won the Calder over top. Like, for me, Hudson's got leverage for days, and he knows he could get a shorter term deal and the way that he could cash in. And that's, I think, if he wanted to point to that, he could get, he could use that as leverage, say, okay, well, if you are going to get me long term, you better give me what I want. He's not playing those cards by any means whatsoever, which is just showing how lucky we are. And the fact that like insiders are starting to chime in, Josh, like just saying how close we are to this.
Oh, yeah.
I think numbers just getting unreal right now.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Friedman. I mean, what bigger insider is there, right? On 32 Thoughts said he doesn't think 8x9. This is 8x9. That is just Jackson Lacombe's contract is too far off for Lane Hutson. He thinks the Habs want Hutson to take less. Hutson in his camp would like a bit more. Yeah, I think that's very fair from both sides. They are at the 5-yard line in these negotiations, but those last 5 yards are always the hardest to get. Friedman says he thinks the Canadiens are talking to Hudson's camp about an 8-year, $9 million AAV. You said less than 9.5, Jesse, and you're absolutely right. We can't hold it back anymore. 8x9 is the structure right now. Like, at this point, I think if you're Hudson's camp, you're saying, come on, Kent, I know, oh, there's no Arborites, but come on, we got to be above Jackson Lacombe and Luke Hughes, right? So, I think like 9 to 9.25. Look, I've always been in the higher end, 9.5 to 10. I've even gone up, I think, as high as almost 11 in my projections before. And I think you've been much closer the whole time, Jesse. I think we're talking legit. Maybe less than 9.5. I don't want to say almost a certainty because I still think 9.5 could be possible, but it certainly is seeming like that $10 million number, that 8-digit number, is probably not even going to happen, which is like if that actually happens, like, I don't even know. Because, like, I'm just going off crazy right now because Luke Hughes and Jackson Lacombe, their projections were like, $6, $7-ish million, maybe closer to 8. Hudson's projections are near 10. And if we get Hutson for the same price as the other guys, I don't like I said, put Hughes in the Hall of Fame. I don't even know. Hudson's agent might come under scrutiny. I don't know. But like we've discussed before, Jesse, this is Hudson's agent, his first big NHL extension of the clients that he currently has. Jacob Fowler's one of them, by the way. So this is setting a precedent for him too. All that to be said, like it wouldn't surprise me if we had some really interesting quirks and wrinkles to this deal that Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes did to make this work best for Montreal and Lane Hutson's party.
And just for the optics, I want Lane Hutson being paid more than 9, even if it's just kind of slightly like he's better than Luke Hughes, Jackson Lacombe, and I want everybody in the league to know that. And I think it's really important we start putting some respect on Lane Hutson's name. He doesn't get enough for just how good of a player that he is, but also just his good nature. It's really just the best of both worlds with this guy. Again, makes you think of Ivan Demidov, where his character's through the roof, his skills through the roof as well. His character's through the roof, and we're going to see that skill. It's going to be climbing up. So we see some guys. That's why this team's really going to come together. It's like like-minded individuals that were able to draft, some of that serendipity. You can't even be that lucky if you try. Like it came into our lap in just amazing ways. And, Jeff Gordon definitely feels like there's ways to make this happen. As we know, they're a clever bunch. It's, whether that's through deferrals, through signing bonuses. There's also different trusts that can be established there. So they're definitely going to figure out the right way, because I think the optics should be there for Hutson in terms of getting that respect. But I also want his take-home pay, which they're going to be able to figure out through that tax session, to just make sure he's getting enough of that take-home pay, to make sure he's rewarded for all that time that he's just put it out at the rink day and night, Josh. I think it's just only right.
Absolutely. Yeah, the dude is working his butt off. You want to go by an hourly rate? Lane Hutson deserves quite a bit of money. I think it's going to be funny if he comes in at like an AAV less than Dobson, but is actually getting more money. Like, we're in the era of seeing some crazy quirks with this salary cap, and with it rising, like 8x9 with a rising cap, dude, for a 66-point rookie defenseman. I can't even begin to say what I would do if that happens. I guess we'll see live on video. Anyway, that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, if you want Lane Hutson to sign 8x9, leave a like on the video, because that's what we want, is what we all want, and it might actually happen. Thank you so much for tuning in every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.